we're here. We just wrapped up like kind of a short seminar.
Constraints-led approach, CLA is like the wording. We talked a lot about wording. I talked a lot. I was just talking to someone else of like, it's probably the most un-ecological approach thing ever to have a 2-hour seminar and talk for 90 minutes of it. Or like that's the entire opposite approach of like limiting verbal feedback and letting them discover it on their own.
It's worth the time right now. Obviously it's like currently there's a ton of discussion about it. You have people like, you know, some of John Donaher's students, you know, Gordon Ryan, people like that posting some like aggressive anti-eco comments. You have obviously the leader sort of in that, at least in the Jiu-Jitsu community, Greg Saunders, and his sort of crew and his gym, and his sort of just as cold-hearted approach to communicating about it, which, I mean, granted, I think he's earned that right.
Yeah. Or developed it, like something we were talking about before of like all the big damn debate stuff.
Yeah.
It's fun to watch, I guess, but like I'm still waiting on conversations with two people who both understand what the constraints-led approach is.
Yeah.
And like then you can have a conversation around like like balancing or what clicks or what doesn't or how you scale it or like anything else.
Yeah.
But just like I'm not gonna do any research and just tell you that whatever I did is the best.
Yeah. So I think for me, like my personal journey is I'm constantly wanting to improve as a coach, wanting to improve, because the better coach I am, the better my students are gonna get, the faster they're gonna learn. I'm constantly, like if I have somebody that comes in new or somebody that's been training for a while, the quicker I can get them to executing moves with proficiency, this is gonna improve my gym and improve them in competition and serve them ultimately better.
Yep.
And so whenever there's conversations like this, I'm always like, oh crap, I wanna learn, I need to know. I didn't learn under the ecological approach. However, there's similarities to approaches I've had, approaches I've picked up, approaches I've been in gyms with. And so I can see sort of the benefit of some of it centered into the right idea, because too many people I've heard like on YouTube or different discussions and stuff has been more like sort of arguing.
Yeah, I don't know what it is, but I hate it.
Yeah.
Like, okay, that's super helpful. Yeah.
It doesn't help me understand like how much of this is valid, how much of it actually does need to be understood, how much of it is actually stuff that you're already doing just under a different name.
Totally. Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like
the two things I want to say is that I feel the same.
Yeah.
Of like I've taught jiu-jitsu a lot.
Yeah.
And like I've trained for 24 years. A lot of the like teaching habits that I picked up have a lot of affinity with some of the best practices that we've learned from the CLA and lots of other sports and movement activities.
Yeah.
And I think I also want to say that I am like a year and a half into this part of the journey. I think I've done the standard prerequisite reading and learning, and I'm happy to share where I am in the journey. It's cool because like I think I know where you are because I remember that like it makes sense, but there's these things that I can't unwind. I'd love to try to help and just share what I know and knowing that I don't have the answers.
So maybe give like the Reader's Digest version, 2-minute version of what constraint based learning. Right?
Yeah, CLA.
CLA, constraint.
The jargon is so tough to get over. Yeah.
It's okay. Constraints-led approach, that's what it is. Or ecological approach comparison.
So I want to steal from Rob Gray, who's like the most popular author, at least in these conversations. He's written 3 books. The most recent one came out this year or last year, and it was about how to become an ecological coach. And the previous 2 are just on how people actually learn physical skills.
I think I saw that book actually, coach or something.
Yeah.
Okay.
So he's got the tagline of "Keep it coupled."
Okay.
And I don't know if it's how he would define everything, but like it's one of the tools I use when I'm trying to explain it.
Yeah.
Of like perception, action, coupling. The jargon gets into you, but just like every other theory of how we learn says that there isn't enough information out there to make a decision. That you have to like internalize it, goes into like sensory memory, working memory, long-term memory, and it like has to get processed, and then after that processing, you get to make a decision and then an action comes out of that.
Okay.
And CLA, the ecological approach, says that all the information is already out there. Okay. And so keeping perception, what you're seeing, what is changing, and your actions coupled is the rule all the time.
Everything that you're learning is in context.
Correct.
Essentially, so what you're talking about, the coupling, is you're saying like,
correct,
whatever move I'm learning, it's always in the context of the action and reaction and the game that is unfolding.
Totally.
I'm never learning whatever technique it is in a static environment or in a sterile environment.
Correct. Like deconstructing the task of passing can include removing all of the defensive reactions from the other player.
Right.
Which is drilling, which is static drilling. I love the term dead drilling because it like really dictates, like tells you what it is, but like people get upset with it. So like static drilling.
Yeah.
Like you've decoupled, you've disconnected the movement with the perception of like, what am I supposed to be measuring? What am I supposed to be seeing and feeling? It's swinging off of a tee instead of simplifying the speed of the pitch or like the position of the pitch.
Yeah.
You've totally decoupled the perception from the action.
Yeah.
It's just the action of swinging.
Yeah. Hitting a tee-ball is vastly different than hitting someone throwing a ball at you.
It's
two different things.
That's it.
I've seen kids do good at t-ball.
Totally.
I had friends that put their kids in t-ball and then never did Little League because they couldn't do it.
That's it. And so there's a term of like scaffolding of like you do the t-ball and then it's like, then you put on swinging another thing. Then you put on swinging another thing. And like it was how everyone thought we learned. And like all of this is in good faith. Like we're trying to help people get better.
Yeah.
But just the recognition that like you can scale and simplify the desired skill without decoupling it. You can keep it coupled.
Yeah.
And just the results are better.
Okay.
One of the big things, let me say real quick.
Well, I was just going to clarify that, but yeah, go ahead.
One of the big pieces of the argument is that like traditional teaching is dumb and pointless. It's like it obviously isn't. Look at like everyone who's gotten great.
Yeah.
We got great.
Yeah. Well, I wouldn't say I'm great, but
it's just about like it is statistically more effective.
Yeah.
It seems to be statistically more effective learning at this style.
Okay, so you can simplify the context, but it's still always in context. So you're not necessarily, you don't have to, essentially like I can deconstruct what we're teaching or the move that we're working on, but I always have, instead of deconstructing it and like separating it to like break it down, just simplify the position and the constraints and whatever, based on who I'm teaching, based on who's working on it, and their ability and their knowledge base will determine maybe how tight those constraints need to be to learn a given set of techniques or moves or whatever flow we have.
And like a lot of the like academic pieces or the coaching book had a lot on this, which was really interesting of like, it's not the best at teaching groups because like everyone is going to have a slightly different problem. That's the whole point of this, is that like everyone is going to guided self-organization is a concept you'll hear all the time of like, I'm helping you, I'm guiding, using the constraints to guide you from where we're starting, the problem, to the solution, and however you get there, it is a win. Not just like prescribing, verbally telling you how to get there, because it is disconnected from the perception of what's actually going on. In most groups, everyone isn't gonna have the same problem. And so like that's one of the tough spots of like embracing the chaos and just like trying to find games that are scalable to everyone's ability. Like we took a big bite today of trying to like, let's do like leg attacks, which is newer here, and eco, which is newer here. And like, can I do leg attacks in eco? It's a fun, just like exposure experiment, right? But like finding the task-based games and tasks are the words. That like aren't really jargony lingo. It's just like what everyone like says, right? But like finding it where like the problem and the solution, the goal of winning the game can scale to everyone's level.
I talked to, so there's a buddy of mine who's never done jiu-jitsu before. His 6-year-old is in our youngest class. Phenomenal little kid.
Love that.
Just competed, tanked everybody. It was awesome. It was so cool. Little Frank and his son would be an example of what we've been doing in the Bear Cubs class, because I can't teach real specific moves. We teach broadly.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of active sort of drilling in those positions with a lot of game-based sort of focused sort of positional exchanges, you know? Like your goal is to just hold guard, get your knees underneath and just get your legs back in, you know, that kind of thing. And they do self-organize. In a tournament, he goes in there, takes every kid down, works to the back, controls the back, and just kept like, he beat several kids 30-something to 0. Like, I mean, he couldn't get his technique to finish the submission, but he was so adept at maneuvering and positional control that it was just things that I could not have taught him specific techniques for, like spinning and taking the back, throwing in hooks, sprawling out, shifting over to mount. It's just like, but it's all like understanding how to just maneuver his body in that space.
Yeah.
His dad's here learning leg locks for the first time and like fully doing it in that context. You know what I mean? Just like 100%. Never done jiu-jitsu before.
I'm flipping the script.
Yeah.
Can you verbalize why it feels like you wouldn't want to teach adults the same way?
Yeah.
What feels different?
There's maybe two parts. One is I think the older people get, because we don't stay active, the older someone's getting, the less familiar they are with maneuvering their body through space. And so what ends up happening, a lot of our sort of basic type stuff that we're doing, we still do, we don't always do it every class, but a lot of our tumbling drills, warm-ups and stuff, I don't really see a bigger purpose in jiu-jitsu necessarily beyond the very beginner level, but at the beginner level, it's at least reconnecting their brain to maneuvering their body through space, if that makes sense. So what ends up happening is they're rolling and they keep repeating the same mistake over and over and over again, and it just is, they don't ever understand how to like play the game, I guess, if that makes sense. And so you want to teach them. You want to show them, like, how is somebody just gonna come up with the idea to break an arm the correct way? But the fear would be that no one is going to, I mean, okay, so for how long have we, like, you learn a cross choke, right? First week in jiu-jitsu from guard, probably at least first month, you're learning a cross choke, right? It was maybe 6 years before I ever pulled one off in a competitive environment, all right? Well, the things that I learned didn't really help me. Like, as I tried to do them myself, they always failed.
A lot.
They always failed. I had a coach show me a grip variation, and exactly how to torque my wrist the correct way. You know, it was just like these little fine things.
The correct way.
Thank you.
Like, that's one of the big eco things that I love saying. Like, there is no one true path.
Yes, a correct way.
Yeah.
Now, the reason why it stuck was I had been attempting it for 6 years. And so there was a framework that little piece of knowledge had a place to sit in. So my brain grabbed it instantly. I wasn't focused on all of the components of the cross choke. I just needed this one little piece of why I could never get someone to tap with it. You know, this one little bit of closing the space off, you know, and just the slight angle, right? I think what makes me nervous is, one, trying to accelerate that process for someone. I don't want someone to struggle for 6 years before they can pull off a cross choke correctly. I don't want people to get discouraged in their journey. I want them to enjoy what they're learning. Now, I think most people enjoy, as contrary to maybe some people, I think more people enjoy the when they can see themselves actually applying stuff. That's when the real joy comes in. So we've always incorporated live drilling. I can kind of share like where I've seen some real similarities to what you did tonight to some of what we do, but not with less specificity, maybe. You know what I mean? So it's like the way that you're teaching is like, okay, it makes it way, I'm way less afraid of it, I guess, if that makes sense. Way more like, I'm actually closer to this. You know what I mean?
Your kids' class was all over this.
Yeah, well.
And like, I think you're giving either kids not enough credit or adults too much credit. Of like, oh, adults can memorize 11-step techniques. Like, but that also, not to overreach, like leads to spots where they memorize the technique and then it takes them 6 years to be able to complete it. Like the memorizing the technique and learning how to do it against a resisting opponent is two separate skills, is the theory, and that like you don't need to learn it twice, you could just do it once.
Okay, you said that tonight. Can you say that again? Because I think that helped close sort of a bit of a gap that I was experiencing. Like in the process of thinking, the idea that I learn it this way, and then I learn it with a resisting opponent. It's actually two things I'm learning.
Yeah.
And so why not just learn one thing?
Yeah, I love the concept, jargon again of there's a difference between knowledge about and knowledge of something.
Yeah.
And like I like the analogy of like drawing. I can draw a football play.
Yeah.
But it's different from like Odell Beckham being able to like read the defender and actually hit that slant.
Yeah.
Like there's knowledge about it of like this is what it's like 4 steps and then you do this and then like I can parrot it back to you. I've got bigger theories on this that I've held for a long time. There's a lot of affinity. Like it's something I've always felt. I'm gonna get lost in a tangent, but I think most people start teaching way too early. And I've always felt this. Now that the concept, the words, the ideas behind it, it's because they then switch over into memorizing knowledge about, and they totally lose the plot on how important it is to increase their knowledge of being able to actually perform the cross choke. I'm just like, I can memorize it, and then people like ask me what is a cross choke, and I go like this and like this. So like, maybe I'm overreaching, maybe I'm not saying things correctly, but I believe, I have drank enough of this Kool-Aid where I believe that like, they're separate things, and so you kind of have to learn them both. Like you memorize the cross choke, and then you had to like learn the skill of performing it, and a lot of that is the perception action of like we can't all be Hodger and just cross choke the world. Maybe he's special. He is special, obviously.
Listen, we want to be,
but like, yeah, for sure. I gotta get taller. But like, when is the right time to attempt the cross choke? Is very rarely part of that technique. And I think like one of the things that like really clicks to me, and I'm telling a different story, but hopefully it is talking about the same thing. I remember so many classes, and I'm not picking on instructors, just the style I struggled with. It's like, cool, we're in headquarters. You knee cut, and then you smash pass, and then you X pass, or you can long step. But like being able to tell which one you are supposed to, like going through the Rolodex of like, oh, it's the knee cut. I'm waiting for a cue. Then I get to process it and then I have an action. Versus just like, don't let their feet get back in front and get in front of their knees. Like however it organizes is gonna work.
Okay, so let's stay here for a second because this is where I think some things that you said tonight checked my ego in a pretty aggressive way. So you talked about like internally we're sort of like the alien at the control sticks of our body. And
that might be a me thing, by the way. I don't think that was in a book,
but here's what was helpful, right? So then there's a question. My wife actually asked a question about coaching, how to coach kids. She didn't use the right language, but I instantly was connecting
with the kids.
What I do, where it's like when like in a match, obviously based on stuff that we've been learning. I don't coach by saying defend a triangle. I'm really, really specific with kids and adults too. Left hand, grab the right lapel. You know what I mean? And I'll be very specific and with a really pretty high success rate actually with those kids responding. Because it's really clear and it's like, and you'll see them struggling and all of a sudden their brain will click on with what we've been drilling, things we've been practicing. And they'll start connecting.
Totally.
And your comment was, well, now you as the coach are the one sitting at the joystick.
You're trying to port in and be their alien.
Yes, and I was like, you said that, and I was like, oh crap. That's what makes me feel good as a coach.
And it works. Oh, like it's a huge ego killer.
That's what I'm saying, it's my ego.
I have the answers.
But here's the thing though, because you do see success, there's good feedback, because then the kid wins, or the person wins, or the parents are like, oh wow, you're good coaching. And sometimes the kids or the adults will walk away learning that lesson and own it themselves. And a lot of times they won't. And you'll have to continue to coach with the same specificity for them to continue to win that way. If you're and this is what happens is we'll be at a tournament and I can't coach every kid. We'll have some of these tournaments, there's like 10 kids competing all at the same time. So we have like a bunch of different coaches there, and the kids that I'm at, the parents are fighting to have me coaching their kid versus a couple of other assistant coaches. Now, if this is you out there and you're watching this video, I'm not calling any names.
We love all the kids.
We
support all of them.
This is normal. If I was the parent, I would actually be feeling the same pressure, and not even because I think another coach would do worse. It's more of just like the sense of safety with the main coach, coaching the kids.
And it is awesome for us.
Oh, it is.
Of like, I helped him win where he probably would have lost.
Yes. However, our actual goal is for the person to self-discover so they can self-own.
Correct.
Which is the term you guys are calling is self-organization.
Yeah.
Now, I think what was really helpful about that for me was that ultimately, if our goal is that the students are able to perform well and own it themselves, there's going to be less situations that they don't know what to do in. And they're going to develop a sense of trust in their ability to problem solve. And this is something I've fought to get my students to have.
Yeah.
I talk about it all the time.
Yeah.
I teach techniques in context. I try really hard. This is how you're going to get them. This is the environment that we're working in, but it's still the verbal piece versus accomplishing those things in the sort of game or the task that I'm constructing for them to discover that in.
Yeah.
That, I think that to me was like, I'm actually closer to the eco approach, but my methodology is through the verbal teaching.
Totally. Yeah.
I think that was like a massive light bulb tonight for me.
I think if everyone can do a better job of defining and then sticking to what the purpose of all of this is.
Yeah.
Like, is it to get better at performing jiu-jitsu?
Yeah.
Or is it something else? Is it about, like, self-discipline?
Yeah.
It's great. I made a weird face there. Like, I shouldn't have. Like, that's a real thing, right?
Yeah.
Of, like, consistency of, like, some people are here instead of the bar. Like, there's lots of stuff going on. But, like, as a coach, like, porting in and be like, I want to be the alien. That's great. But, like, I've always tried to define it as, like, the point is to help everyone get better at jiu-jitsu.
Yeah.
And so, like, taking yourself off the pedestal, and your point is to guide them through self-exploration.
Yeah.
Like, it is a correct way, not the correct way.
Yeah.
Because it works
Yeah.
and it doesn't lead to a higher injury rate, then you just have to, like, get out of the way and let it happen.
And
that's
I like those boundaries, right? That, like, if it's working and it doesn't lead to injury, or it doesn't put them in an environment where they're injury prone, you let it happen.
Yeah.
I'm gonna sidestep for just a second because I think what really makes sense to me in my head is to see ideas broadly. I'm always looking for, like, principles that are, like, applicable in all areas of life. If that makes sense.
So Zika.
One of the things that I've been doing, we teach parenting classes and we do that and stuff, and we have for a long time, and we've used originally the material is from this thing called Parenting with Love and Logic, which is all choice-based parenting, essentially. And it's built around the idea that your ultimate goal as a parent is for your child to have self-control, that they control themselves. They make choices, and they understand that every choice has good consequences and bad consequences. And ultimately, you're teaching them how to self-govern.
Yeah.
And the more I lecture, the more they're convinced they can't problem solve themselves.
100%.
The more that my teaching or my instruction comes from the lecture versus from the consequences, they're always saying, let the consequences do the teaching. So, like, as little kids, you give two choices that work for you, constraints.
Sure.
Okay, constraints that are going to set up the framework for their learning. And if they're in an environment where they're about to make a poor choice that is not life-threatening, that doesn't put them in the hospital, you allow it to happen and allow the consequences to teach them in that environment. And so it's like you're describing this thing, and I'm like, holy crap, I've been doing parenting this way for the last, I mean, my oldest son is 16. I used it when I worked in a group home. I worked in a really, really intense level group home in California for a year. I used it I never had a single conflict when I was there. I used it as a bouncer, actually, with, like, dealing with people. In 3 years of bouncing, I think I only physically took someone out 2 or 3 times.
Sure. Like, telling people what to do in jiu-jitsu can be fun, but in, like, real life, it's like, no.
Dude, it doesn't work.
You're like, these are the constraints. These are the options.
And
how do you want to organize it?
You make your choice. Here's a couple
I
choices.
don't want to put too much. I'm a parent. I don't want to, like, put too much. This is how I parent. Everyone.
And it is for sure that, like, absolutely. But the
pattern matching is really eye-opening.
It's the idea of, wait a second. What my goal is that what defines a successful adult is that they can self-control their self-autonomy, and they're making what we would term as successful choices, meaning that, if you look at it psychologically, with this stable marriage, stable job, they can own a home or provide in that sense. They are in an environment where they can also pursue dreams and sort of self-actualize, these, like, sort of components. It's all rooted on their level and their confidence and their ability to navigate choices. And so, but what you're describing with the constraints-based learning is actually, it's the same principle, but around a specific task or skill set that's physical, that also feels very confusing, just like life does. Like, I sit down with people all the time and they're like, I don't know how to make this decision, I don't know what to do. But it's the exact same anxiety people have when they're like, I don't know how to pass their guard. I don't know how to get out of this situation. I don't know how to get out of an arm bar. I don't know what to do. I've fought so hard for people to own what they're learning and to actually understand, no, we have to apply this. But the class is split in half. I mean, it's like there's like a smaller portion of that and a larger portion of learning the technique and then practicing it with a compliant partner. So the actual time frame for them to learn those things is significantly less than like what we did tonight, you know?
Seems like the data seems to show that this is faster and stickier.
Yeah, which is crazy. So, okay, so you made the comment, I think people start teaching jiu-jitsu too quickly.
This is outside eco, this is like on my Reddit black belt post in 2015. I was like, this is who I am, this is where I came from. Also, this is the thing I care about the most. Everyone's teaching too early. I started teaching too early. And just like, you just start learning, when you see something, you memorize it so you can pair it again later.
So this is what's crazy. So I started helping with kids' classes just to help subsidize the cost at the time. A bunch of kids training, that kind of thing. And I just was supporting on the mat. I wasn't teaching the classes. Then I started, me and the other guy, were kind of teaching like the little kids classes and stuff. But it was all the Gracie games. It was all these game-based things. So it was less of the pedestal sort of, I know all the techniques and stuff. Because I didn't, I was blue belt at the time, purple belt at the time. We moved here. I was a purple belt for a long time due to injury and moving, changing gyms, all of that kind of stuff. When we opened this gym, it was shortly before I got my brown belt, so I still technically was a purple belt. And we got it because I wanted my kids to have just more opportunities to train. There wasn't a lot of kids programs in the area. When I think back at the way that I taught in that season of those first couple of years, there was way more learning through live drills than there was. The more advanced I got and the more confident I got in my skills and my ability to communicate and my confidence in my technique. Which is like, at that time frame, people would drop into my gym all the time and be like, these guys are savages. Like, this is crazy. And it's like you guys just drill hard all the time. It's like, no, it's a constant active drill. We're gonna work on passing drills, and it's the concepts. And I would teach concepts at the time because I didn't know necessarily all the details, but the concepts I can communicate around, under, over, through. You know what I mean? Like, control the feet, control the knees, control the hips. So it's like, and there's some drills I knew, some specific techniques I knew, so we'd focus on it. But it's just fascinating that my own fear of coming across like I knew so much at that time frame actually set up my teaching in a slightly better.
And it's like,
you know what I mean? I'm like, you're saying this, I'm like,
it's the point of this speech. Like, do you want me to tell you that you were teaching too early or you were not teaching too early? It's like, no, you did it different. It's just, I think that's one of the important things in all these debates is that we have to recognize that almost everybody is doing the best they can. Same with parenting. You're not trying to make.
No.
You could find the outliers, but no one's trying to make bad kids. That's why I like this approach, because it's like, if there was evidence that something was better, we'd do that.
So one of the things,
so I think that connects a lot to I didn't have the confidence in memorizing the 11-step techniques and being able to recall them and be like, oh, your step 8 is wrong or whatever.
And I didn't want to say it like I knew it when I didn't know it.
Totally.
I wanted to be authentic in what we were teaching and what we were practicing. My own fear of being something that I wasn't, at the time. What's the significant difference between someone or a school that is doing positional sparring, or what would maybe be traditional positional sparring, and a constraints-based game? Because it seems in some contexts that they would be the same. And I think the argument for people that teach traditional is that it is the same. We teach a technique, we work on it, but we're doing a constraints-based game. We're playing a guard drill from closed guard, from half guard, mount escape, whatever,
I think from where I am in my journey of growing as a coach, like same thing. Like we're both just trying to do the best we can.
Yeah.
I think this approach allows me to do the best I can. That's why I connect to it. So like the jargon I'm about to drop is not something I own or completely understand, right? But like, I think it's just way more work being a great constraints-led approach style coach than just like, here's the curriculum, just parrot it, do it. I'm gonna go sit on the sideline and text. Like, that's not us, but we know who it is, right?
Yeah.
Versus like I'm rounding around to the difference between how I would define what I think positional sparring is and games or tasks within the constraints-led approach is that it's still coaching is a deep skill. You're meshing your knowledge about and the knowledge of and this skill of coaching to help like find the right way to connect to everyone to let them succeed. And so when you're designing a game, even if it starts from a like half guard, positional sparring is like we start from a half guard and we're playing Jiu-Jitsu Go.
Yeah.
It's like cool. Like,
even if you're doing sweep pass submit, it's like we do that a lot.
Totally.
It's still everything.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And like it doesn't knock people out of the traditional mindset of like the alien in the brain pulling the levers. So like which technique am I supposed to use? I think when you're designing task-based games with constraints, you are using it a lot of times to destabilize an action you're already seeing.
Yeah.
Like one of the students was just asking me like, I'm passing, I'm getting in leg locks a lot, this is what I'm doing. Like I could just tell him not to put his foot there, but like if you can create games that makes him putting his foot there not work or be farther away, or like there's a lot that you can change them, you can change the ground,
that's way harder than just being like, don't put your foot there.
Totally. And we not know, but there's data that one of them works better.
Yeah.
And so like, are you gonna eat it?
Yeah. Yeah.
Are you gonna just grow up and be like, what's the point?
You want
is it to help them get better?
Just be like, just don't put your foot there. The problem is they will continue to put their foot there until it really bites them in the butt and they lose a tournament because they put their foot there.
They will eventually, again,
or in that sort of zone.
Like maybe I'm not saying the science right, maybe this isn't the right way, but like when it gets solved on its own like that, I believe it is understood to be in like an ecological moment where they are self-organizing a new solution based on the perception action coupling that is in live training somewhere else. Yeah. It's not specifically because you told them not to put their foot there.
Yeah. Yeah.
It might nudge them to like have that be one of the affordances, one of the options they can take. And like there's not no instruction in CLA, that's silly.
Yeah.
But just like to design the like destabilization where the constraints are, where the walls of the maze are, to be like, I want you to pin both their knees to the mat and not drop to your knees. Yeah. And not let them entangle you, like however you're gonna, like it's just, it's tough.
So, okay.
It's more difficult and you have to be really comfortable calling time and being like, cool, this isn't working. Let's go to the next thing.
It's not solving the problem, we're not getting there.
I'm not seeing the change that I want to.
Yeah. Okay, so in that context then,
which is different than starting them from a specific spot and being like, play jiu-jitsu.
Yes, exactly.
How I'd circle back to say like, those are the differences.
What it sounds like you're saying, and what it sounds like the ecological idea or the constraints-led approach is doing, okay, is replicating the original, it's replicating two things. It's replicating the way we learn in general, in all things. Riding a bike, we talked about that. There's a great illustration, the balance bike versus training wheels approach, okay? Which after 4 kids and teaching them how to ride a bike, training wheels suck. It is the worst way. And every kid has the emotional breakdown of when you take the training wheels off and they realize they don't know how to ride a bike and the training wheels never helped.
They've spent a lot of time learning a different skill.
Yes.
That feels like riding a bike, but it's totally different.
Yeah. Absolutely. Okay.
Totally with you.
So it's doing that. The second thing it's doing is it's trying to speed up maybe the original process of discovering, the grappling arts. Okay. What I mean by that is somewhere along the way, someone discovered a Kimura and how to break a shoulder with that figure 4 gripping and how to pin the hips, whether top or from the bottom, hipping out and controlling and then pushing the hand to the back of the head. That's in a lot of different grappling arts, not just jiu-jitsu, it's in a lot of them. And someone discovered it, and I would dare say multiple people discovered it all on different pathways in different places around the world, because the shoulder only breaks in 2 or 3 different directions.
Correct.
Okay. What we're trying to do as an ecological coach is trying to create a game that sort of replicates that learning process without it having to be so loose that over 6 or 7 years of just rolling on the mat, someone randomly discovers what a Kimura is.
Sure.
You're trying to create a game that sort of forces the self-discovery of something that you do know. You do know a Kimura. You can teach a Kimura. This is not a debate. This is a silly debate. And when I hear people debate against eco, this is basically what they're saying is, oh, what, they're just going to discover on their own what an arm bar is? Or what, it's like,
you leave them in a warehouse and they end up airballing.
yeah, it's like, or like my favorite meme, by the way, which is awesome if we can find it and put it up there, it's 2 belt ties.
Yeah,
It's
yeah,
one that's
yeah,
like
yeah.
traditional way, and it's like a perfect knot, eco, and it's like the classic white belt knot that's just like all over the place.
And I for sure responded to you with that.
Oh, it was
Like,
awesome.
that-
I think I
this is
shared it. I think I shared it.
Totally.
So I love that meme.
Yeah.
Because it sort of also sort of shows people's lack of understanding of what ecological coaching is.
Yeah.
It's not that you could explain to someone how to tie a belt, but how many of us that coach, how many of our white belts still tie it wrong? How many of your blue belts still tie it wrong? How many of your kids don't know how to tie a belt for years and years and years until they sort of figure it out? You show them so many times, and eventually their trial. And so what I do in my kids class too is I basically, like, you have to tie it first yourself, and then I'll come over and help if you need, if it's not done.
Yeah.
Like, just to force them to do it, so eventually they will land down correctly. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I know that. So you know what a Kimura is, but instead of just telling someone what it is, it's like the whole like teach a man to fish versus
Yeah.
giving them a fish.
Yeah.
That's what you're doing in the ecosystem. It's like this. It's not some mindless, like you're just letting people throw a bunch of coins in the air and they randomly land in stacks.
Yeah.
You're creating very intelligent games that are, you're creating constraints small enough, based, like tight enough for whatever is needed to learn a specific skill set. So if you're working on a very, very specific skill set, your constraints are going to get tighter and tighter and tighter, so that the self-discovery is real narrow focused. Would that be accurate?
We're real close. I think the thing that, and again, maybe other people would disagree with me.
Okay.
There's some things that are like mandatory.
Yeah.
I don't think, so like what you're kind of describing is like, cheating is the wrong word, but like using eco to make them memorize the technique that you want them to memorize. If I make the constraints so tight, they'll do the Kimura just like I want to do it.
Maybe
like,
less that, but maybe more, maybe zoomed out just a little bit farther than that.
Yeah.
Meaning, okay, we know that a knee cut works, but we also know there's a lot of ways to make it work. But there's some general principles that make a knee cut successful. I have really heavy hips. My knee cuts are typically more successful when I'm using my heavy hips.
Sure.
And pinning and sliding through versus the sort of buzzsaw style daisy fresh knee cut where they scoop and throw real far out there and then slam over the shoulder.
Totally.
Knee surgeries, really heavy hips, that usually doesn't work for me, but it almost always works when I use it. Okay, we understand it. Both of them work.
Yeah.
But we can create a game that doesn't just, it's not just passing, it's not just going through the legs, it's discovering how to lead with your knee and slide through tight enough that it takes their ability to re-guard away. And so trying to come up with a game that like allows them to discover that, is that too narrow?
I push back on it a little bit, and that it might be too narrow, in that like the counterexample is like, I mentioned it earlier, and then I armbarred like 3 people today. It's funny how it like gets in there. But like, I like to say that I don't armbar from close guard.
Yeah.
And I I do.
Yeah.
But like, can you like, it doesn't have to be about you. There are good black belts who don't Kimura.
Yeah.
Does that mean they're not black belts?
No, yeah.
But like, when they're transitioning from side control to mount, will they have better success if they force the elbow away from the body?
Yeah.
Like, this pattern gives you more control and therefore more options.
Yeah.
As they fight it back in, finding a Kimura grip.
Yeah.
is one of them, and we can like give constraints if that's the goal of like getting the Kimura grip can be the winning condition of the game. Like if that's what you want to add, that's totally fine.
But you're still teaching, you're still showing what a Kimura grip is and saying, hey, I want you to get to this grip.
You can.
Even
you
with like the
define
ankle
it
lock
at the
tonight,
end.
you're like, hey, you're like, this is your end goal to get to this position.
Yeah.
So, so on some levels, you are teaching.
Yeah.
You are showing.
Oh, there's lots of teaching. I think that's one of like the misconceptions.
Yeah.
But it's not, this is the only way to do it, now go drill it against a static person.
Okay.
I think that's the big difference.
Okay.
I think like, it's like if you're fighting fair right now, it feels like every debater will lose, because at the end of the day, everything is eco. Like teaching in the traditional manner is eco.
Yeah.
Like the constraint is you have to learn through this very but a less efficient way. Like that's a constraints-led approach. So therefore what you're doing is what I do. And then anything that isn't that is also me. So I have everything. So therefore I win.
That's hilarious.
A poor way to change hearts and minds, right? And it's not our job to change hearts and minds. Everyone just wants to do the best they can, and this is what works for me. I think if they're going for, I'm changing the analogy, but if they're going for a Kimura and failing, like creating constraints that destabilize the things that they're doing that are causing them to fail, which in our minds, because of where we came from, might be very like, oh, you're missing technique step number 7. But like from what you're talking about of like understanding concepts of like to finish the Kimura, you have to control their center line so they can't rotate as you're rotating their shoulder forward or elbow forward or whatever. Like you can create games to like help that person do a better thing, but at the end of the day, I think something that people get lost in, and we were talking about it, what Matt mentioned, of like eco isn't going to work because it's going to take my training partner like 5 years to ecologically learn all these techniques that I demand that they know. Like they don't need to know every technique.
And
it's
technically,
weird.
they're actually not going to know it. No matter how many times you sit there and try to tell them, they're actually not going to know it in a live role.
That's it. Yeah.
And this
knowledge
is,
about versus knowledge of.
And this is what we see in our class. Kids, adults, all ages, right? Like many of them can recite or show a technique.
Yeah.
And none of them use those live.
Yeah.
They use what works, what they've self-discovered. They use what they own.
It's so easy to see once you're aware of it.
Yeah, the CLA approach, right? This is like what you're saying is actually happening in every gym across the world. This is actually how everyone is already learning jiu-jitsu. It's just we slow it down by also adding a portion where they're sitting and teaching and learning.
Is one of the current theories that I have read about, and I don't know if it's the standard, but like I agree with what you said, but like if this is on the internet, people will be like, that's wrong. And maybe it is wrong.
I mean, maybe it is wrong, but I just mean it in the sense that what I see is I see students learning techniques, drilling them, but the ones that are winning with those techniques are the ones that are using those in a live environment, that are learning it in a live
like that kid you were
context
talking
and
about.
know how to apply it in a real scenario. Okay, so maybe the teaching style isn't an ecological approach to teaching, but what they're actually using and what they're applying is still stuff that is learned based on the ecological approach of teaching. Is that better?
Yeah. The ecological approach to skill acquisition is what they're running into by the perception action coupling of figuring out how to do it when the other person is moving. Yeah. And like this is what I think that I might be wrong on, that like other people are going to argue about.
That's a better way to say it.
And the pieces I've heard about it, I don't think are actually from jiu-jitsu, but other sports arguing about like, obviously you need to do both. There's a huge thing right now. It's huge in jiu-jitsu, it's huge in lots of stuff. Yeah. But like, I think one of the theories right now, and it's obviously from the eco camp, so they're pretty biased. Yeah. But like, if you are going by the traditional model, which I think like the IP, information processing model, cognitive load theory, all of that, to actually learn the knowledge of the live skill, IP, the old school needs eco, and maybe it's like hidden in that like, when you let that bike seat go, and that 5-year-old is rolling away, you're screaming at them. You're trying to pour it in. You're like, no, left, turn right, turn left. Look out for the triangle.
Lean, balance.
It's a stupid example because it's too easy to be like, oh, obviously you're correct. But like, that doesn't help.
Yeah.
It doesn't help that. Like, even if they go left, it's like, blah.
It doesn't actually.
It's them learning it based on all of the feedback, all of the perception and their actions coupled together.
Yeah.
The wind direction that day changes how they learn how to ride the bike.
Yeah.
And like, I think
the actual.
And the other side.
Oh, go ahead. Yeah.
The theory, which is like, I don't know if it's real, but like, the traditional model needs eco, or eco is hidden in there somewhere.
Yes.
Eco does not need the traditional model.
Yeah.
You do not need to memorize the names of all the techniques to be able to pass someone's guard.
That's what makes people uncomfortable.
Me too.
I think that's what makes people uncomfortable. Because I think when we really look at it, every single high-level coach that teaches more of a traditional model, whenever I hear them talk about stuff, when you watch their students perform well, it's always on the other side of this skill acquisition process.
Yeah.
Right? Like it's hidden in whatever they're doing. Danaher has like these Danaher rounds. We do them in our Nogi classes a ton, which is like basically every class. We don't do it every class, but it's positional sparring, but it's always just wrapped in, and you just start from multiple positions. Top person, right, from mount. Bottom person escaping. Top person only wins with a submission. You just back and forth.
Yeah.
Right. Another position, and you're constantly just always in these different positions that you don't a lot of times find yourself in a live role, and so you're constantly getting time in these positions, and so then they have these students that are just really adept at all these different positions, and that I think that creates a framework of learning techniques in the traditional model, but still their application of those techniques still only happens after this ecological sort of like way of skill acquisition is what I mean.
I don't know enough about it to like put a stamp on it.
Okay.
But like a thing that I really like that is eye-opening, that is hopefully eye-opening and annoying because it is tough to refute, is that like Danaher is like the Harvard, and so people that not only are the best but learn in that style end up succeeding there.
Yeah.
But we don't count all the people that either went there or left or recognized it wasn't for them or anything else.
Yes.
Like it's one of like the Big Dan debates, which is a stupid name for it, and I'm not critiquing him. Everyone just wants their way to be the best. We all want to be the hero of our own stories.
Yeah.
The best teams in the world don't use eco.
Yeah.
The worst teams in the world don't use eco. Like you're not measuring anything.
I love that.
It's like the bottom 1,000 schools don't use eco.
Yeah.
What are you talking about?
Yeah.
Like it's not about whether one does or does not work. It is about like what is more effective.
But okay, so we were texting about this. This pulls into high-level competitors.
Yeah.
I feel like we can almost trace where their real skill sets came from a more ecological approach. And this is like goes back to like brother champions, brothers or twins.
100%.
Where it's your Hibero brothers,
Yeah.
Mendez brothers, Ruotolo brothers, Meow brothers.
Yeah.
I mean, just like on and on.
I want to take credit. I at least like this is something I independently stumbled onto.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it was like, you said it, I was like, and I've talked to my kids about it, it's like your best training partner is going to be your brother, where you just go out there and roll. And you're going to like, and you see these videos of Ruotolo brothers from when they're teenagers, like talking about some random technique when they're kids that works, like, oh, this is what I do with my brother, and you're like, oh, that's some high level. That's like, that's not like a random technique.
Yeah.
But they just kind of discovered or found it just through that process of.
Because their perception of what was going on and their action choice were always coupled. And like the theory, just to back up to make sure that we say all the words, is that my theory is that like you see so many great brothers or twins in the sport because if you're training with them a lot, brothers don't want the other brother to do well, so they will try to prevent you. They won't just static drill. They're gonna try to mess up your stuff, which means they're like causing a feedback loop in which you have to
problem solve in the moment.
That's it.
Little things.
That's it.
Like little nuances, which is what happens in a live roll.
Yeah, I have a brother. Yeah. You can tell me that you're static drilling, you're speed drilling all day. All
you do is you just keep doing this, and what's crazy. It's not even a live match.
Until mom sees.
Yes, it's just irritation. It's like you're not gonna get it. You're not gonna get it, and it's like, oh, then they get it, and they've learned how to solve this actual problem of someone twisting their foot around.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
That's so fascinating, dude.
Tackets.
I'm like, oh, the Tackett brothers. That's another one, dude. Yeah. So here's the thing. In conclusion, you are free as a listener to do what you want.
Yeah.
If you are trying to improve as a coach, I would recommend that at the very minimum, you find ways to incorporate whatever skill you're learning, the perception coupled with action. Is that what you're saying? Find a way to do that. If you want to teach techniques and still go about that, I think some of the questions we don't have time for would be wrestling through, I think, like, how much does this work in gi? I feel like it's almost easier to do it in no gi than it is in gi. But I know that's just my,
and like there's a layer.
That's just my thinking.
And there's a layer on top of this because Greg has said, the leading voice in CLA in Jiu-Jitsu, Greg Souders has said that he doesn't like gi, so he doesn't train gi.
Yeah.
I don't think that means it doesn't apply. I certainly use it for both.
And there's something about the gripping that amplifies the very specific nuances of where to place some things that you don't find quite as much in no-gi, I think. But at the very minimum, whatever you're teaching, please, if you are a coach, find a way to couple those two things, action and perception. Whatever technique you're learning, do not just drill it in a static way. At least have them start to ramp up their resistance in the position. At least find a way that, like, they're learning it in context. You know what I mean? At the very minimum.
Yeah.
You know?
I think it's tough. I
know you're probably in the camp of, like, abolish.
I would go the other way.
Side.
I would go the other way. It's tough.
Okay.
Of like, what I would want everyone to do is to not stop learning. Mm-hmm. Like, I would obviously love them to, like, keep it coupled. Just like the small changes, like, will make a huge difference. Yeah. But like, I just want, like, you see so many coaches that, like, get a black belt, start their own school, and then 10 years later they've learned nothing. And they run a successful school, and it's great. Yeah. But like, not only, knowledge of, not only the performance, your own growth. Yeah. Yeah. Like your growth as a coach. I think everyone needs to spend a month and do whatever, academic, mental capacity you have to do as deep a dive as you can on what the current trends are, recognizing that it has nothing to do with jiu-jitsu. Yeah. Like I was saying before, the entire German national team soccer youth program is 100% eco. There's zero German youth players in the national team program dribbling around cones right now. Yeah. Zero. Yeah. They care about soccer more than anyone cares about anything. Yeah. Like, at least understand why all of this stuff is being argued. Yep. And then you can figure out how it relates to you and your program, and then you can make the right decision from there. Yeah. If anything, just to, like, create better debates online. Like, watching all these people debate with Greg and have no idea what their approach is, let alone what the ecological psychology-based pieces is tough. Yeah. So like the magic sauce is that perception action coupling. Yeah. The tool we use to guide them into specific actions is the constraints-led approach. Yeah. Ecological psychology is how everything in the environment will impact decisions. Yeah. That's awesome. Everything is eco, which is unfair, right? Yeah. But like the keeping them coupled is like the big thing right now, but just like, you have to learn. Yeah. And everyone's catching up to that, of like, we don't do legs. You're like, at some point, you're gonna have to start recognizing that leg locks exist. Yeah. Or you don't, but like, at least understand why you're making that choice. That's the big thing. Yeah. That I would recommend, that I don't care if anyone follows or not. But that's where we are. Awesome. Well, Kyle, dude. Thanks for having me. Very seriously, fun. Thank you so much. And like and subscribe, I guess. I gotta try to grow our channel somehow. Yeah. However, more than anything, does your channel like 100-minute long post-training chats? And we're gonna find out. What I care though is that this conversation actually gets out there and helps people coach better. Yeah, for sure. That's what I want. Yeah. So